On previous assignments, some of you have used timers before, and you've done a little bit of mental math and figured that since our frames per second is running at 60, then we're just going to keep some sort of timing variable, and every time we run through our loop, that's 1/60th of a second, and so once our variable reaches up to 60, that means 1 second has gone by, and then you've been able to make some sort of timer based on that information. Now, I'm going to show you a slightly different way that you can do that based on how many milliseconds have passed since Pygame was initialized. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the code pygame.time.get_ticks. Now what this does is it passes back the number of milliseconds that has passed since Pygame was initialized. So I'm going to call this start time. So right before we get into our main loop, we are going to have a start time. Now right here I can print start time. So it'll just get printed in the background, and you can see 265 milliseconds passed before I started my while loop for this game. Now I want to keep track of how many milliseconds have passed. So I'm going to do that right down here in my processes. I'm going to make a variable, and I'm going to call it current time equals pygame.time.get_ticks. So current time will always be how much time has gone by since the Pygame engine was initialized, and I'm going to print current time here. So that as the game runs, you can see right here, these are the number of milliseconds that have gone by. Now obviously we don't really probably want to keep track of time in milliseconds if we're going to be putting it on the screen somewhere. Instead what we'll want to do is we'll want to have some sort of seconds timer. But if we divide our milliseconds by 1,000, then it's going to work out just good. So divided by 1,000, our current time divided by 1,000, you can see right here, we've got these weird decimal numbers, so again, let's modify it. Let's round it to 0 decimal places. So in order to round this time, I'm just going to convert it into an integer. That way it will get rid of all of the decimal points, and you can see now it's just counting up 3, 4, 5, 6 as the seconds go past. And you can see my game is still running just fine. And now it doesn't matter what my frame rate is, my timing will always be in milliseconds converted into seconds converted into integers. Okay, but I actually would like 1 decimal place. I think that looks kind of more accurate. So I will put around here, and we were going to round this number, let's say, to 1 decimal place. So now when I run it, you can see the number of seconds that's gone by, and it has 1 decimal place. Okay, but I don't want to have to print this in the background. I actually want that on the screen. Well, that's really easy to do. We've actually done that before, right? So we need to convert this current time into some sort of surface that we can blit to the screen. And the way we do that is with the render command. So first up, we're going to need a font. So I'm going to go way up here to where my variables are, and I'm going to say font equals pygame.font.font. I'm going to use the default font and maybe size 25. Okay, so this is the font variable I'm going to be using to render it. And now right here, I will make a variable called timer_text. And I'm going to say that is going to be font.render. What do we want to render? We could say time, and then we could also have our current time. And we have to convert that into a string. Do we want it anti-aliased? Yes, so true. And what color do we want? Let's say it's going to be green. I think I have a green variable at the top. Yes, I do right here. Nice green variable. So we can use that. Okay, now that we've got our text, we just have to blit that to the screen. So down here in our drawing, after we draw the background, and after we draw our ship, then we can say window.blit timer text. And where do we want to blit it? I kind of like to blit it in the top right corner of the screen. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a guess as to where that is. If my screen is 800 wide and I want to come back maybe, I don't know, 75 from there, then that would be 725 over and 0 down, but I'll just have it slightly down. So do 10, see how this looks. Okay, you can see it's right there. It's going off the screen, and to be honest, I don't like that green a whole lot. Now, one way I can get around that is I could just draw a rectangle right behind this text. So instead of just saying right here is where I want to do it, I could say, all right, I just want to know how wide is my text, and I'm going to shift it back that far from the right side of the screen. And so the way I can do that is 800 is the right side of the screen, so I'm going to give it a little bit of a border, let's say 790, and I want to take off the width of my timer text. So the way I could do that is I will go timer text.getRect. Remember, that means get the rectangle information about my timer text. Now the first piece of information, which would be 0, would be the x coordinate of this rectangle. The second piece, which would be a 1, would be the y coordinate. The third piece, which would be a 2, would be the width of the rectangle. Okay, and if you need the height, you would use a 3 here. So 790 minus the width of my rectangle, comma, and 10. So I want it 10 down. So now when I go and run it, you can see the timer is up here. That looks a little bit better, except time is kind of bouncing around, and that's just because of the widths of the numbers a little bit. So that doesn't work super nice. And we also forgot to change our color, and we also forgot to round this number. So when I come up here to round the number, when I get my current time, I can actually just round it right here. So I'm going to round the number that I get, and after I divide it by 1,000, I'm going to round it to 1 decimal place. So now when I run it, you can see the time looks a lot better now. But I don't really like how this is being drawn right now, so I'm just going to do a little bit of guesswork here. And let's just say 700, see where it ends up. That looks pretty good right there. And because it's kind of hard to see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the font a bit bigger. So up here where I have my font, I'm going to change my font to size 35, and I'm going to change my green color RGB. So I'm going to give this quite a bit more green to it. That's a lot easier to see, but I need to move it back onto the screen a little bit. So I go back down here again, and instead of 700, let's say 675. See how that looks. That looks pretty good. Now, of course, once this gets up to 10, it's going to have to shift over a little bit more, and we'll just wait till it gets there. That still looks okay. Okay, but if I need to go up to 100 seconds or something like that, I'm going to still want to have it shifted a little bit more to the left. So let's make this into a 650. That's not too bad. Okay. Now, if I wanted my game to just run until I reached 10 seconds, then all I would need to do is in my processing, I could just say, all right, if current time is greater than or equal to 10, then what do I need to do? Done equals true. So when I run it, you can see my time is 4, 5, and I'm just flying around. That doesn't mess with the time at all. My bounce still works. And there we go. 10 seconds, game's done. That's it. I can get rid of the sprint function as well, clean up the game a little bit. And there you have it. There's another way that you can use a timer.